second. All right, well, welcome everyone. We are here to talk about the property values that dropped in mailboxes over the past few days. And so for those of you that are watching or have registered through the Zoom link, you should be able to chat. So if you have any questions, just pop in a question and we'll make sure that those get answered while we're here. But I'm going to pass it over to Tom now, and then Sean, I guess you can start.
Hi everyone, this is Tom Grisak. First, I want to explain quickly how the appraisal district comes up with a value for how do they know what's happened on your home since the last time. I actually had an interview. I contested my taxes last year and had an interview with them and just asked them, how do you guys know? Like if someone's added a pool you can't see in the backyard and Google's out of date. Well, they actually fly all of Collin County every year, and I'm, at a lower altitude. So they can see what's going on if you've added a pool or a gazebo or deck or anything like that. That's how they know about it. And they also will be looking at the, if you filed a permit to do additions to your home, they will know about that. They go to the tax records to find that within or the city permits. They pull permits from the cities. And then they also, they don't have access to the MLS on the first go round. They are allowed access to the MLS if you protest your taxes. So they're coming up with a value that they think is fair based on what's out there. But if you protest it, they can take it deeper, and they actually have done that with me on when I was contesting mine. They pulled up the same comps that I had, and then I showed a couple that they didn't have that weren't on there. So anyway, Sean is going to be our point person on this because he actually got with the Collin County yesterday and find out if they were doing anything new this year versus last, and he can update you on everything else. But I just wanted you to know how they actually find out what you've done since the last year when they did the assessment on your home. So Sean, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, everybody. Sean Elliott with the Grisak Group. Thank you to everybody joining us today. This is actually something that we've done for the past 4 or 5 years now, is kind of help people gather information around this time just to see if protesting your assessed value for the upcoming year is worth it, if there's actually data out there to help you. So that's really all this is. We're trying to provide as much information as possible. I know that when these letters hit mailboxes this week, there was a lot of sticker shock, obviously. I mean, most of you have been following what's happening in North Texas with real estate values, so we knew that this was probably coming. But even at that, we've talked to a bunch of people who saw their assessed value go up by 40%, 50%, 60%. I mean, these are some big numbers, so we know there's going to be a lot of questions out there. And Aaron, before I jump in, maybe we can just clarify something, because in years past, we've done a sign-up genius where people can sign up for individual tax sessions where we go through their specific situation, look for comps that will help them. I assume we're still doing this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. So we will be sharing that link to register within the next few days, latest the early part of next week, and it'll just be through a sign-up genius. And we've had a lot of success doing those virtually through Zoom or a Google Meet. So whatever is convenient for whoever needs to have an individual meeting.
Perfect. So that's what I thought. So today will be kind of an overview, what we've heard from the county over the past couple of years, and then my conversation with them this week. And then obviously, if you want to take it further, we'll send out that link and people can sign up for an individual session where we'll talk about their specific situation. So just want to make sure we're clear on that. So the first thing is really, it helps to understand how the county does this, why they assess the way they do. And really within the state of Texas, with us not having a state income tax, property taxes are massively important. I mean, it's a huge deal for the state. And for the past 10 years or so, the county assessed value of homes have been under the market value of homes. And so the state of Texas, it was like 6 or 7 years ago, they basically informed all the counties, hey, you need to pick up the pace because, you're collecting taxes for homes that are not as high as they should be based on market value. So the county's been trying to catch up. And now with what we've seen over the past 18 months in property value growth, I mean, there's really nothing they can do. The data that they have and the homes that are selling in most cases do warrant an increase in assessed value by what we're seeing. So like Tom said, every January, the county will fly over every home. So they'll take aerial shots to see if you've improved anything on the exterior. And then they do look at, the data that they have access to see what homes are listing for, their projection on what they're selling for. And so that's kind of how they create their assessed value. We'll put this in the chat, but one of the things that the people at the county told me this week is you can actually email their open records department and they will reply to you with the exact sales or the comps that they utilized in coming up with your individual home value. So we'll put that in there. So, and I've never tried that before. That was actually new information to me that this is something you can do. But in theory, you can email them, say your property value, and then they will send back the comps that were utilized and come up with your value. And then at that point, we can cross-check it, see if we can pull up any sales in your immediate neighborhood or immediate area that has similar criteria to your home and try and get you some lower values that might help fight that taxable number. So for most people, you're going to fall into one of three categories. The first is that you live in your home and you have a homestead exemption. And there has never been a year where having that homestead exemption has been more valuable than right now. So we'll talk about that. Second category you'll fall into is if you have an over 65 exemption, and we'll talk about kind of what that does for you. And then the third category, if you
Hey, Sean, we lost you.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
oh, bye, Sean. Sean's coming back. So Sean had to take a quick Wi-Fi break. Sorry about that, everybody.
did I just get dropped?
You did. Welcome back,
There you
Sean.
go.
Was that me or was that an administrative problem, Aaron?
That's not me.
I think that was on you, Sean.
That's like the perfect Wi-Fi commercial. What do you have? What kind of service do you have? AT&T or Frontier?
Yeah, no, we got AT&T. I'm good. I pay my bills.
All right, moving on. Moving on.
Back into it. And then the third category will be people that unfortunately do not have a homestead exemption. Maybe you just bought a house recently and you haven't thought to apply for that homestead, or you were waiting for it, whatever the case is. Or if you're an investor and you have a whole bunch of investment properties where you obviously can't claim a homestead on all those properties. And that's going to be kind of tough for those folks this year. So first bucket will be the people that have a homestead exemption, and that's going to be the vast majority of people living in their house. So just as a for instance, if you live in Allen ISD, the tax rate is 2.126. So let's say hypothetically, just for easy math, you have a home that was assessed last year at $500,000. You paid roughly 10 grand in property tax value. So now that you got your assessed value for this year, if it went up by 40%, which a lot of people have, then it will say on there that your home is now worth $700,000. 500 up to 700, that's 40% growth. So I think the natural reaction of people is going to be, well, crap, now my $10,000 tax payment is going to go up by 40%. And so I'm going to pay $14,000 this year. The good news is that's not the case if you have your homestead. If you have a homestead exemption on your house, the assessed value of your home can go up by whatever, but the amount that you're actually taxed, the amount you pay, is capped out at 10%. So instead of paying $14,000, which I think some people are going to think, you'll pay $11,000. It'll just be 10% growth on what you paid last year. Now, a lot of people that we talk to also think, okay, so my taxable value, if I have a homestead, can't go up by more than 10%. That's not exactly true. And that's where those aerial shots come in. If the county sees that you added a pool, a secondary structure, a gazebo, the things that Tom mentioned, then they will put an increase on your taxes for those items as well. And there's no exact science to that, but basically if they hit you with the full 10% growth and then some additional items because you've improved your property, then you can get up to 15% in a higher tax payment for this year. So that can be higher if you've done something on the exterior of your home. So just be aware of that. So even though the assessed value of your home might be up by a lot, 50%, whatever the case is, the amount you'll actually pay in taxes if you have your homestead should cap out at 10%. Now, I think a question we're going to have this year is, okay, if that's the case, is it even worth me protesting this if, it doesn't matter, I'm going to be hit with a 10% increase anyway? And my answer, and I think all of us agree, is yes, absolutely. For the next couple of years, you need to expect there's going to be a 10% increase in your property taxes you're paying. So if there is any data to support fighting that and lowering that number a little bit, I would strongly advise to do it this year, next year, the following year, whatever the case is. Sorry, Tom, did you have some?
Well, I was going to tell them about the process of filing for a homestead exemption. Is it too late to get that now to count for this time?
Excellent point. So in years past, when you bought a house, you had to actually occupy the house on January 1st of the following year in order to apply for the homestead exemption. That changed this year. So now as soon as you buy a house, you can file for your homestead if you qualify, obviously, if it's your primary residence. So let's say somebody bought a home at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, definitely file your homestead now. You can get it on your property. So when you end up paying taxes at the end of this calendar year, the county will at least prorate it. So from January through April of this year, you didn't have a homestead, so you're going to have to pay taxes based on the value of your home they gave you. But once that homestead's in place, you'll have the rest of the year covered. So yes, you can file for your homestead right now. It's free. There are a lot of programs out there that say, hey, we'll help you, file your homestead for a minor fee. My recommendation is don't do that. It's very easy to file your homestead and it's free with the county. So yes, definitely do that.
Let me say this too, how the process works. I ask a lot of questions, as I said, last time I was there, and said, how do you possibly keep a handle on everything? And what they do is they assign agents to a particular area, and that agent is responsible for all of the property within that area. I don't know if it's broken out by commercial and residential, or they're just assigned residential or whatever, but they're assigned an area, and it's their responsibility to drive those streets every year. This is what they do in the off time when they're not handling protests. They're supposed to drive it, every home in that area, and then take a visual inspection of it. And then they also do a visual inspection from the aerial that they have. By law, they're not required, they cannot come into your home uninvited. However, you can ask them to come in if they doubt that your home is very dated and you want them to see it. Absolutely, you can ask them to come in and look at it, but they can't come in to verify. Now, that's the really tricky part. Is you could live in a neighborhood where all of the homes around you are very highly updated, but your home's 15 years old, you've never done any updating at all. They're going to assume that all the homes in that neighborhood have been updated, and that's going to impact the value of your home. So that's where you can really help by taking pictures of your home. When you protest, you can send those, let them see what your home looks like. They know what a dated home looks like and what an updated home looks like. Send those to them, explain what you would have to do, maybe look at it, well, if I were to sell my property in this neighborhood, this is what I would have to do. It helps to have any type of, if you've met with builders and given you estimates of what it would cost you to bring that home up to match the quality of the homes within your neighborhood, that helps tremendously. What else? Any repairs? Obviously, that's number one. If there are repairs that have to be on your home, let them know about it and show them receipts for that. Anything you've already done, unfortunately, isn't going to help you. It's just things that still are required. So that's important for you all to know. It's kind of like they're going to put a price on it, and it's up to you to either accept the price they've given, or it's kind of like you're guilty and proven innocent. They're going to assume your home is worth a certain value. It's up to you to prove that it's not.
And to that point, like you said, one of the things that the appraisers have told us is if you're going to do that, if you feel like your home, the interior needs to be improved and therefore your taxable value should be less, you have a much better chance of winning that argument if you have had vendors out to give you quotes of, hey, a full kitchen remodel, I've got that quote for $40,000 and my floors to be replaced are going to be $15,000 or whatever the case is. So that definitely helps. So Homestead is obviously number one. If you have it in place, you have some protection in there. If you don't, sign up for it as soon as humanly possible. And I know one of the things that was just in the chat bar is, how do I make sure I've got a homestead exemption? I think, Aaron, you already answered that. But if you go to Collin or the Collin CAD, their website, and just type in your property address, along the top, there's a search bar and it says property address. Just type in your address and it'll bring up the full county information and it will say what your exemptions are. So that's on there.
Let me say this, Sean, let me say this too. Every state doesn't have, I don't know which states have it and which states don't, but it's a big advantage to you to have a homestead exemption, because not only does it help you with your taxes, you have certain protections with a homestead exemption. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to get into what those protections are, but a lot of people of wealth will buy a home in Texas and put a homestead exemption on it because they are protected in some ways from that being attached to some type of litigation. And I'll just leave it at that. But it's very smart. Always that homestead, if you live in Texas, that's a very big deal. So always make sure you have it, even if you're not concerned about your taxes. It's smart to have.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second category that people will fall into is if you're over 65 or you have a disabled exemption on your home. And with that, and this was actually kind of new knowledge to me, I was under the impression that if you had an over 65 exemption, that your property taxes were frozen completely at whatever that rate was when you got that exemption. Apparently that's not totally correct, because when you look at the letter that was sent in the mail, there are 4 taxable categories. There's the city, the county, and then any school districts that you pay into Collin County. So if you're over 65 and you've got that exemption on your property, then those school tax values are frozen. You're essentially, the county saying you're not utilizing the school district, so you're not having to pay that increased price. So those are frozen, but the city and the county can still be changed. So you can still, those rates can still go up. So if you're over 65 and you say, hey, I've got my 65 exemption on there, what's the point in having my homestead as well? Get the homestead as well, because that's going to put you at a 10% cap on the things that can change, that city tax rate and that county tax rate. So if you're 65 and over and you've got that exemption and a homestead, then really the amount that you're going to be paying in taxes is going to be pretty minimal, because that city and that county tax are a lot less than the overall school district tax. So that would be the second category. And then the third category, people that are investors that have a whole bunch of properties they can't put a homestead on, or somebody that, is unaware of the homestead rules, and so they don't have it, and maybe they don't file it this year. They're in for a hefty tax increase. Whatever that new value is, you're going to be taxed on the rate that they have for that municipality at that full value. There's no protective layer in place to make sure that you're not paying more than 10%. So that's going to be tough on a lot of folks that have multiple homes. But so that's kind of where it's at. And then I know the question always comes up, okay, how do I know if it's if there's any data to help me fight this? And if I want to protest, how do I do it? That's going to be more specifically for the individual meetings we have, but I'll just give a general overview. So if somebody sits down with us and says, hey, here's my assessed value, is this legitimate? We will get into MLS and we'll search for properties that sold between February 1st of last year and January 31st of this year. That's the time window that the county uses. So a home has to close during that specific time span. And if we look at that data, and there are very clearly some similar homes in the same neighborhood or area that sold for well under what your assessed value is, then we'll obviously share that data. We'll say, yeah, here are 4 properties that might help you lower that number a little bit. I would suggest you go online, protest, and then when the appraiser calls you back and you're basically talking to them about which comps you want to substitute to help lower that value, then at least you're armed with that data. You've got the sales prices and the addresses to help you with that. And we say this every year, and I think most people are pretty good about it. when people see this value and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to pay so much more in taxes, that they're obviously frustrated. And so sometimes when they talk to somebody in the county, that frustration comes out. Our advice is don't do that. Be polite, be professional. They're dealing with a lot of calls from angry people. So if you're just another angry voice on the other end of the line, they're not going to have much incentive to help you out. But if you do share data, meaningful data that helps, and you're polite about it, most appraisers are going to try and find a common ground to help you out. So, and we'll talk to you about that as well during our individual tax sessions.
Yeah, you can't go in without any documentation and say, I think you've assessed my property too high. That's not going to fly. They'll ask you, why do you think it? Well, I just think it's too high. It's not going to work. You have to prove your point to them. And again, I don't know how much we're going to be able to help you, because prices have skyrocketed everywhere. But it's still, I would still protest. And you've got to realize the next process after the protest is, if you can't come to an agreement, it goes to an appeal process. So that adds another layer. And like any government bureaucracy, they don't want to clog what's happening, go up the line. They don't want, thousands and thousands of people appealing. So they're going to try to work with you. They're going to try to be reasonable. At least they were with me. I can't speak for other people. I didn't get everything I wanted when I appealed, but it was reasonable, and I didn't have an issue with it. If I had, I probably would have appealed. They're not there to, excuse me, they're not there to gouge you. Like Sean said, put yourself in their place. They're getting hammered one after the other. So going in there with a bad attitude isn't going to help at all. They're people, just like everybody else. It's their job to give a fair assessment, but not gouge anybody. So if you go with that kind of attitude, you're going to be okay. And chances are you'll get some type of reduction. I know people that have been protesting every year for 10 and 15 years, and I look at their values, and it's ridiculous what they are on the tax rolls versus what the real value is. And that's one of the reasons that we don't even go by when we're coming up with opinion of value. I don't even look at the tax rolls unless I want to find the square footage of the home or the amount of land that it's on, because I know it can be ridiculously low, and in some cases it can be way high. That's what a realtor will do for you. You weed out the highs and the lows, and you come up with a good average.
Yeah, over the years that we've been doing this, I mean, I don't have a set statistic for you, but I'd say maybe about 30 to 40% of people that we meet with actually have a reason to protest, and the rest generally is not worthy of the time. This year, I'm afraid that number is going to be even lower. The people we talk to, maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 are going to have a reason to protest, where we can provide them with some data that helps. But like you said, with the sales prices we've seen over the last 18 months, I mean, if the data supports that price, the data supports that price, and there's really not a whole lot that you can do other than, like we said, if the interior of your home really needs a lot of updating, and you can kind of verify the cost that it would take to get your home up to the level of the other homes around you, then, there might be a reason for you to protest. But beyond that, it's just going to come down to a case-by-case basis this year. And most of the time when you protest, and me specifically, I've protested every year for the past 3 years, and I always get a little something off. It's never maybe the full extent of what I'm hoping for, but even if they meet me halfway, it was worth the time, because you do that year over year over year, and you're saving money each time. So I definitely think it's important. People that are concerned about this, sign up for a time slot once that invite goes out, and we'll sit down, we'll run the numbers for you, and we'll give you honest feedback on whether or not it's worth it.
Hey, Sean.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, let me jump in here, because we have a few questions.
Sure.
And someone asked, for an over 65 exemption, does the person over 65 have to be on title or on the deed?
It's a good question. I would certainly think so.
I would think so. They have to be able to have some claim to that property.
I mean, if the property is in a trust, or maybe it's under an LLC or something like that, but the person that applied for the 65 and over exemption is a part of that entity, then I would think that'd be fine. But no, I would think the name would need to be reflected on there.
Okay. And then the other question that we've had is, should we begin contesting now, even though this is just a notice? And so there is a time frame of when a deadline of when you need to if you're going to submit a protest.
May 16th is the deadline. And so, yes, I would start sooner rather than later, doing your research, and we can help you with that, getting some comps that might speak to a lower value. So yeah, and Aaron, I don't know when we're going to send out this invite, but are we going to start meetings next week?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, if we start meeting with people next week, then that gives you a full 2 weeks and a little bit more to just go online and file the protest. And it doesn't have to be resolved by that point, but your protest has to be in by the 16th. So yeah, that needs to be in there in the next couple of weeks. And just because I see that somebody wrote in to explain the 10% cap again. So basically what that means is whatever you paid in taxes for your property last year, that if you have your homestead, that price you pay can only go up by 10%. And so for easy math, let's say you paid $10,000 in property taxes last year. If you have your homestead on your property, then it can only go up by 10%, which is $1,000. So instead
chances are it'll go up 10% every year for the next 3 to 4 years until it gets
correct. And I think that's going to be a question that we're going to have this year too. If the market turns over, and let's say that property values stall out over the next couple of years, which we'll see where that goes. But those people, if that does happen, people need to still expect you're going to get hit with a 10% increase in your taxable rate every year for the next couple of years, because it's going to take time, if you have your homestead in place, for what you're paying to meet with what the value of the home is now on the assessment. So even if prices stall out this year and you see your 2023 assessment and it's the exact same value as you see on this year's assessment, chances are you're still going to get hit with that 10% rate increase, because they have to catch up. And if you're tapped out at 10%, but your property value went up by 40%, well, that's a few more years of that 10% hike to get you up to where you should be.
Sean, there's one of the questions was, what is the email to request comps that the county used for appraisal? I went in and did it personally, so I've never done it by phone. So why don't you, I was able to sit before COVID, sit right there, and we went through everything.
I know Kevin Brooks. What's up, Kevin? Yeah, I'll type it in there right now. So it's or@cadcollin.org. So that, and again, that's new to me. I never even knew that existed. So I'll be curious, Kevin, if you email them today, let me know kind of what comes back. And actually, I'll be doing the same for my property. But supposedly, you're just able to put in your name, your address, and they'll send back the addresses that were used to determine this year's value. Oh, never mind. It's Kim.
Hey, Kim.
All right.
Is that correct, though?
So Kim, you do that, and then we'll talk to Kevin later.
Is it ORR? Is that correct? ORR?
Open records. So yeah, that's what they told me. ORR@cadcollin.org.
Good. That's helpful.
So we had a question on here from someone that says, why would market value improvements such as structures, buildings, etc., show $100,000 increase if we have made no structural improvements?
Well, the value of the home is actually, for a long time, the home values were remaining about the same, but the reason the prices were going up, it was because the land underneath them was escalating so quickly. But the value, you may not have made improvements, but just because your home is there and it's increased in value every year, whether you've made improvements to it or not in the county's eyes. And really, that's probably true, because homes are more expensive, whether you've done anything to them or not.
Right. And then we had somebody through Facebook, thank you for watching in Facebook, said that, I bought my house in June of last year. So does the 10% apply? Because their assessment went up 42%. And so basically the 10% applies as long as they filed for that homestead exemption, correct?
Correct. If they've got their homestead on the property now, and since they bought last year, they weren't eligible to sign up for the homestead until January 1st of this year. But if they've done that now, then it should be where whatever was paid on that property last year can only go up by 10% this year. I
Okay.
believe that's the case.
Let me tell you a little story that happened with me too. When I protested, I had the perfect comp for our home within the same neighborhood, but it was 3 days out of the date of when it could be used, and they wouldn't allow it. And I said, guys, you can't get a better comp than this. This is just, it's like the same home. And they said, we can't do it. You know, we've got to stay within that guideline. So I was able to use it the next year, but I couldn't use it that year. Now, since then, I've heard that under certain circumstances, they can go back further if there's no, they probably have to make exceptions. They would have to, because in especially markets that we work where there aren't a lot of comparables anyway, sometimes it's a problem we have. We have to make exceptions for extenuating circumstances. But if you put it in your mind that you have to use those closed homes within those dates, you're going to be okay.
That brings up a good point. A lot of this, as we've said, comes down to people's situation. But if you live in a pretty standard subdivision in Plano or Frisco or whatever, they're going to have the data necessary to come up with a pretty accurate value. But if you live in a very unique lot in Lucas or wherever the case might be, where there's probably not a lot of very easy comps to draw in, then yes, there's going to be a little bit more flexibility for what they can utilize.
Out here, pricing homes is an art. It's not a science.
It's
and
tough.
Yeah. Aaron, do we have any more questions from out there?
I think we've got everybody covered, but yeah, if there's any other questions, go ahead and let us know. We've got a couple of more minutes. And for those of you that registered through the Zoom link, we can follow up with you guys separately to see if you want to schedule something individually. There are sign up next week. And good.
Why don't you explain how that process works, Aaron? When we visit with them, it used to be they come in person. Now we're doing it on Zoom too, right?
Yes, Zoom. We had a lot of success with those meetings via Zoom. And so what we will do is through our newsletter, we'll send out a notice with a sign up Genius link. And so you can sign up for a spot, and you're going to be paired with one of these amazing agents that you see here. Everybody wave. Y'all, this is the Grisak group. And there's some people that don't have their video on, but they're awesome too. So we will schedule a time with you. We'll ask for some information. Hi, Alice. We'll ask for information on your address so we can go ahead and start pulling the sales activity around your home and just have some comps prepared. And I think Sean's already addressed this. It may be a tough year for protesting taxes when values, it seems on average, went up 20% for everyone on average. And I know, Alice, you're on this call too. Yours went up, what, 60%?
It went up 60%, and it said my improvements went up 70%. So we're fighting it, and we'll be going through the process along with everybody else.
Yeah, and does anybody know off the top of your head, what is the deadline in Collin County to submit your protest?
May 16th.
May 16th.
Yeah. And by the way, everybody, this may be, you all may know this, but this is a complimentary thing we do. There are no strings attached to this. We just do it as a service to the community, and we're not going to hammer on you for listings, anything like that. We just do it because it's a service that we provide to the community. So I think we can, if there's a way we can help you, I can promise you we'll help you, but we're kind of, our hands are tied by the comparables that are out there, but we'll have them if they're on the MLS. So we'll share them with you.
That's a really interesting point that you say that, because just yesterday I had 2 flyers in the mailbox for companies that I could call and hire, and they would help me fight the tax value. So yeah, there are plenty of companies out there that are looking for a payday to help you with this. That's not what this is. If y'all want to sit down and meet with us, it's just complimentary. We'll just talk to you about the data that's in front of us. And if you decide that it's in your best interest to go to the county and try and protest, then obviously we'll give you what's needed to try and help you with that.
They have the same information that we do, but we have the experience. These are we're helping you in areas that we know and understand. So if we see something that's really out of line, we'll know it pretty quickly that I think you've got some grounds here. But if we see something that's right in line with everything else, we'll tell you honestly, I think, you're welcome to protest, but I think the chances of you doing it are slim. You may get it down, but don't expect too much.
I was gonna ask if anybody watched the news this morning, because the news, sometimes we get the scare tactic a little bit, but they were talking about property taxes and how all of the bills hit people's mailboxes. And they interviewed a woman that was saying that she had intended to do all of these improvements on her house, but now, she's going to be paying all of her money in property taxes because I think it went up, her assessment went up 200, it was assessed at 500,000 last year, and it's like 750 this year. So she obviously was under the impression that she was going to have to pay taxes on the full 750. And they never talked about the homestead exemption at all. So had they discussed that, then she probably, yes, it's going to still be a hit tax wise this year.
Right.
Not as significant as she's probably scared it's going to be, because I think she is under the impression about hundreds of thousands of taxes, which that's not the case. So I think the note is what Sean said about the homestead. I mean, make sure to check to see if you have one, and if you don't have one, file it today, because that's the best way to save your money.
Did you see? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that's going to be the biggest concern that we address this year, is people seeing that their value went up by 50% and thinking that their taxes are going to go up by 50%. So yeah, it's a huge point to make sure you've got that homestead. Sorry, Tom.
Aaron, did you see that question? Someone had said they have a 16-year-old HVAC system.
That's Randy. Randy in Fairview. What's up, Randy? I guess the thought on that is that their first question is going to be, is the AC working? And if it's working, then there's not much you can do. But if you really feel like the AC is at the end of its life and you have a quote for a new AC,
right,
give it a shot.
Yeah, how are they going to prove whether it's adequate or not? It's up to you to decide. I can't live with this thing anymore, and it needs to be replaced.
But any estimates you have on work that needs to be done, if your fence is falling apart, if your roof needs to be replaced, anything like that, you should utilize those estimates and use those as supporting documents for your protest.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to lower my hand because my hand raising tactic is not working on our call today. I have a question. This is coming from Facebook, and it says, so if my assessment shows the 42% increase, will the homestead exemption negate that? Or are they saying that I owe the 42% increase? Just need some clarity around that. So the 42% increase is on the value as a whole, correct?
Right.
So if the assessment showing that increase, how does the homestead exemption help negate that?
Because you're capped at 10%.
10%.
Right.
So,
And what you're protesting is not whether you have to pay that 10% increase or not, because you do. What you're protesting is you think they valued it too high and you want to bring that value down.
So if the assessed value went up by 42%, the only way you can knock that down is by protesting if there's data to support it. And perhaps you take that 42% increase and drop it down to 35% increase, whatever it is. You're still only going to be hit with a 10% increase on your actual taxes if you have your homestead. That value can't go up by more than 10%, but you can't just argue with the county about the assessed value and have that drop down to just 10% growth. That value is going to be higher for almost everybody. So that goes back to the point, if I protest and I take my assessed value from a 40% growth to a 30% growth, is it even worth doing if the amount of tax I'm going to pay is still going to go up by 10%? And my answer is yes, because at some point these numbers are going to have to catch up. So yeah, I would keep the assessed value as low as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. It's not going to save you money necessarily this year. You're probably still going to pay 10% more in taxes than you did last year, but somewhere down the line, that's going to catch up. And so you'll be happy you kept the value as low as possible.
All right, yeah, because then they shot a note and said that it was actually the estimated taxes that went up 42%. It was a 42% increase. So that's what's helpful about these one-on-one meetings. And JB, we'll make sure we get you on the schedule for that. What's also helpful is if you can scan a copy of your actual document that you got in the mail, and send that to us when you schedule ahead of time, that will be very, very helpful for us, so we can really see all the information, the same thing that you're seeing. So hope that helps. Okay. Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Anyone?
Oh, hold on. Let me open this box. Okay, good. Debbie, I'm glad that we answered your question. And thank you, Angie. And somebody asked, how does this affect new home buyers this year? Well, oh, hold on. Especially if we have bought a home this year. So how does that impact? Let's say somebody bought their home. Krishna, when did you buy your home? Can you type that for me? So let's say if they bought their home and they bought it last month. So they bought their home in March. How
Is it pre-existing? Their build finish?
Krishna, did you build, or was it a pre-owned home?
We can answer both. If it was pre-owned,
Pre-owned.
then file your homestead today. And essentially, essentially what's going to happen whenever your homestead is filed and approved, from that date until the end of the year, you will have a homestead exemption. So you will have a 10% max increase on the amount of tax you pay. But from January 1st of this year until whenever the homestead goes into effect, that amount of time you are going to be subject to the full 40% increase in taxes, or whatever the assessed value went up, prorated for that number of days. Right. Now for new builds, and Aaron, you might need to weigh in on this, but I mean, if you basically purchased a piece of dirt and the assessed value was next to nothing, and now you've got a completed home and the value is now $900,000 or whatever the case is, I mean, those are going to be the taxes.
Yeah, keep that in mind. When you pay your taxes, when you buy a home that's under construction, you're only going to be taxed on the value. It'll be a much lower valuation than the next year when the home is completed. And it really stuns some people because they get hit with this huge tax, but that's only because they were only the taxable value of the home a year ago or 10 months ago was much, much less than the value of it right now. So
yeah, when you're sitting at that closing table on a new construction home and they have that portion on your closing statement that talks about the prorated taxes, and you're like, wow, this is so low. Like Tom said, it's only low because they were valuing some dirt and some sticks that were on the property as it was being constructed. And now that the improvement is 100% complete, you just be prepared that your taxes are going to go up for the next year.
Can I say one last thing here?
Of course.
If you decide, we are at interest rates are going skyrocketing, and we feel like they're going to continue. I'm not so sure they won't be at 7% by the end of the year. You don't know. Inflation rate is going up. Gas prices are high. Eventually, all of this, you're paying higher in taxes every year. There are a lot of people that are going to decide, I want to get out of this. I'm tired of paying high taxes. I'm tired of, carrying this property. If you guys decide you want to sell, and I think a lot of people will when they see what's happening, and I know they are because people have talked with me about getting out of the area. I don't know where you can go where taxes are a lot less. I know if you move further out, obviously you get more for your money. But if you decide that's something you want to do, please let us know. Because if it's in Collin County, that's our wheelhouse. We can help you with that.
I was talking to a builder today about his new properties up in Van Alstyne. I mean, it's going to be moving that way. Sorry,
yeah.
Heather, you had something?
Me? No, I think y'all covered it, actually.
Well, and just to keep things into perspective too, I am not a mortgage specialist. However, having a conversation with someone today talking about the interest rates, historically, if you look at it, it's still they're high compared to what we were super blessed with in the past few years, being in the 2 range. And so just trying to keep things in perspective there. And I'm still seeing, you know, for the property that we listed in Fairview a few weeks ago, in the 1.2 million range, those are, you know, we had 8 offers on that property, all well above list price, and all of them, with the exception of 1, financing. And I'm seeing, and maybe you guys are seeing this, really large, significant down payments, you know, so probably, you know, 50%, you know, down, where in the past it's 20%, which makes sense. So
Many of the higher price point homes in a way, they're less impacted by interest rates, because you're right, Aaron, those buyers, either they pay cash, a lot of them, or they put down 50 to 60%. So a point or two in the interest rate isn't going to affect them as much as a point increase on a $350,000 or $400,000 home.
right, yeah, because we're, you know, for the majority of us that are, you know, that's a certain section, right, of the market at that upper end price point. But for the masses, you know, when we're looking at those interest rate, it's obviously the higher the rate, the less amount of house you're going to be able to buy. And then you really start getting into what can I afford on a monthly basis? And that's when that interest rate is really
Right.
impacts our group. So I'm looking, I don't see any more questions here, and I don't see anything else on Facebook, but Tom, Sean, any agents, Wendy, Christy, Heather, Alice, Courtney, anyone have anything else to say to wrap it up? I hope this was
Okay.
helpful
No,
for
just,
everyone.
I think just call us or shoot us an email and let us know if we can help you individually, because we've done this, like we've said, for years, and we're happy to assist you in any way we can, just with your protest, because like Sean said, we only have a few weeks until those are due. So you want to get yours submitted as early as you can,
Right.
completed, but we're here to help. So just reach out and let us know.
They tend to get real busy near the end of when those protests are due. So the earlier you can get out there, the better. The longer you wait, the busier it's going to be. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Aaron, is that it?
You're muted, Aaron.
Muted,
You can't give
Aaron.
Your send off.
Okay.
Good
Bye, everybody.
information.
Everybody.
Bye, thanks.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
Ariel, bye.
Bye.
Bye.